truth about cannabis and marijuana law reform.
I smoke pot and I like it a lot.
CannabisRadio.com presents The Russ Belville Show, the voice of the marijuana nation.
Hey, this is great, man.
Now, here's your host, Radical Russ Belville.
All right, good day, tokers and tokettes and non-toking lovers of liberty. It is Wednesday, February 24th, 2016, and it's got to be 420 somewhere in the world. And I am back and better than ever here at beautiful Rolla J Studios in Portland, Oregon. It's about 8 blocks farther away from where it used to be. And we're going to continue calling it Rolla J Studios. Herb and I decided that's what it has to be, so it shall always be Rolla J Studios. We got a great show for you today. Calling in for our Hemp Day, Hump Day update, we've got our friend Doug Fine. He's calling in from the organic goat farm down there in New Mexico to give us the latest update around the country and around the world in the world of industrial hemp. And there's no better expert than Doug. He is the author of Hemp Bound and Too High to Fail, and you've seen him on TV. You've seen him in those documentaries. He's the expert. He's going to tell us what's up with industrial hemp. So stay tuned for that. That's coming up at 1:30. Also coming up on the show, we're going to take a look in the drug war data mines at the notorious 9 prohibition states. There are 9 states left in America that maintain absolute marijuana prohibition. I'll tell you what that means when we get to the drug war data mines. That comes right after Behind the Headlines. And in Behind the Headlines today, just an interesting look at hypocrisy in Philadelphia, where the Philadelphia Flower Show has gotten into a kerfuffle from local marijuana activists who wanted to have an informational display on cannabis, at a flower show. Seems kind of appropriate. We'll tell you what happened and where the hypocrisy lies when we get to our Behind the Headlines segment. That comes right after the Cannabis Radio News. In the headlines today, all sorts of interesting things happening worldwide. We've got medical marijuana in Australia, a right to medical grow in Canada, Vermont Senate moving forward on legalization, MPP looking for medical marijuana in Ohio, Wyoming trying to ban edibles, and some new rules for producers of medical marijuana in New Mexico. And speaking of medical marijuana, oh my goodness, wait till we get to the radical rant today at the end of the show. Americans for Safe Access has released this report card, if you will, rating all 50 states in a very detailed ranking and rating system, all 50 states in America on their medical marijuana policies. And California topped the list. That's no surprise. But wait till you figure out who else topped the list and tied with California in Americans for Safe Access's grading scheme. We'll get to that in the radical rant here coming at the end of the show. Also coming up in Toker Talk Radio, Hour 2, the Oregon Senate looks like it's moving ahead with integrating medical and recreational marijuana. We'll talk the good and bad about that. Eric Holder, the former attorney general, somehow thinks the drug war's over. We'll have to give him some clues about that situation. We've got Canada and their largest pharmacy chain wanting to sell medical marijuana from the pharmacy, kind of confirming some of that Box Canyon stuff I've talked about for a long time. We got a study coming out of Colorado saying that tourist newbies are going to the hospital more often for marijuana. Gosh, who could have predicted that? That's strange. All that's coming up, plus your calls in Hour 2 at 971-533-7111. Got a show today and tomorrow, and then Friday I'll be coming to you live from Fort Worth, Texas, where I'll be participating in the Southwest Cannabis Conference and Expo, gathering interviews and taking photos and bringing the experience of legalization nationwide to you right here on The Russ Belville Show. Absolutely free.
This is The Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
Ganjapreneur.com, your guide to the cannabis business world. Ganjapreneur.com is a comprehensive resource for cannabis professionals and entrepreneurs. Download the Ganjapreneur app on your smartphone or tablet to catch up on cannabis industry news, scroll through our daily job listings, and learn about successful cannabis companies, executives, and investors. Ganjapreneur.com, helping Ganjapreneurs grow.
The smoke is rising, and the next crop of podcasts devoted to cannabis providers and enthusiasts are ready to be harvested. Welcome to the Cannabis Radio Network, founded by respected rainmakers who have been producing award-winning podcasts for over a decade. Industry headlines, business updates, medical reports, marketing, and e-commerce education rolled up perfectly for your consumption. Let's grow together. The Cannabis Radio Network. CannabisRadio.com.
Coming soon to a city near you, Cannabis Finance Boot Camp. Get all your cannabis accounting, legal, and compliance questions answered by their knowledgeable panel of industry experts who want to help your cannabis boom. Whether you're a grower, dispensary operator, or a newcomer to the field, your cannabis needs Cannabis Finance Boot Camp. For information on upcoming events, visit CannabisFinanceBootCamp.com.
It's time for the Cannabis Radio News, covering the latest headlines in consumer cannabis, medical marijuana, and industrial hemp. Cannabis Radio News is now available exclusively at CannabisRadio.com. Now your marijuana headlines in 4 minutes and 20 seconds. This is Cannabis Radio News.
This is your Cannabis Radio News for Wednesday, February 24th, 2016. The Australian Parliament passed a measure Wednesday legalizing medical marijuana. The amendments to the Narcotics Drugs Act will allow cannabis to be legally grown for medical and scientific purposes for the first time in Australia. The decision came exactly a year after 25-year-old Daniel Haslam lost his life to terminal bowel cancer. Haslam used medical marijuana to ease his pain and nausea before he died last February. His mother, Lucy, started a medical cannabis advocacy group called United in Compassion and petitioned for the government to make it legal. The health minister reminded people that the changes would not affect recreational marijuana, which remains illegal. A Canadian federal court judge has struck down federal regulations restricting the rights of medical marijuana patients to grow their own cannabis and given the Liberal government 6 months to come up with new rules. Judge Michael Phelan ruled Wednesday in Vancouver that the marijuana for medical purposes regulations were an infringement on charter rights and declared they have no force and effect. But the judge also suspended his declaration for 6 months to give the federal government time to come up with new rules. Lawyer Kirk Tusaw, the co-counsel for Neil Allard, who launched the court challenge, was clearly pleased with the decision. He believes the ruling will have implications for those who wish to grow their own pot for recreational use. The federal Liberal government has committed to regulating and legalizing recreational marijuana, but has yet to introduce any legislation. The Vermont Senate gave its initial approval to a bill Wednesday, 16-13, that would end marijuana prohibition in the state and regulate the cultivation and sale of marijuana for adult use. It must approve the measure a second time in order to send it over to the House of Representatives. A second vote is expected sometime this week. S-241 would make it legal for adults 21 years of age and older to possess up to 1 ounce of marijuana and establish a tightly controlled system of licensed marijuana cultivation sites, testing facilities, and retail stores. It would also create a study commission to examine issues such as edible marijuana products and home cultivation, which would not be allowed under the bill. It would remain illegal to consume marijuana in public or drive under the influence of marijuana. If approved, rulemaking would begin this summer, but the new law would not take effect until January of 2018. Marijuana Policy Project is in the final stages of writing a constitutional medical marijuana amendment for Ohio voters to weigh this November. MPP hopes to have the measure ready within a week. It will be modeled after medical marijuana laws in 23 states and Washington, D.C., allowing Ohioans to obtain marijuana if they suffer from qualifying medical conditions, including post-traumatic stress disorder and chronic pain, but not anxiety. Wyoming lawmakers are struggling with how to craft legislation that moves toward banning marijuana edibles, that is, brownies and other foods and beverages containing marijuana. Soon, they may just ban marijuana edibles altogether. The Wyoming Senate on Monday voted to advance a bill making possession of more than 3 ounces of marijuana edibles a felony. However, senators continue to argue about how to measure the concentration of marijuana in the substances and its potency. The debate was prompted after a state district court judge ruled last year that the law outlawing marijuana refers specifically to pot in plant form and does not cover the extract found in edibles. The Senate rejected an amendment sponsored by Senator Cale Case, Republican of Lander, to allow defendants charged with felony possession of marijuana edibles to argue the substances they possessed held the equivalent of less than 3 ounces of actual marijuana plant material. The names of licensed nonprofit medical marijuana producers in New Mexico and those seeking licenses from the state will become public under new rules taking effect next week, the New Mexico Department of Health announced Monday. The confidentiality surrounding producers was challenged last year in a lawsuit filed by freelance journalist Peter St. Cyr and the New Mexico Foundation for Open Government. They argued the health department was violating public records law by keeping producers' names secret. The agency has been reworking the rule since July when Governor Susana Martinez ordered officials to make the information public in the interest of transparency. The changes in confidentiality apply only to producers and producer applicants, not the more than 21,000 patients certified in the state medical cannabis program. This has been your Cannabis Radio News for Wednesday, February 24th, 2016. I'm Russ Belville. When you are starting up a medical cannabis business, you want a fired-up lawyer who understands the needs of cannabis consumers. The law office of Lauren Vasquez is your fired-up lawyer for the cannabis industry. Visit her website, firedupLawyer.com, or call 1-855-MMJ-LAWS for more information. That's 855-665-5297 for Lauren Vasquez, your fired-up lawyer, or email firedupLawyer@gmail.com.
You're not high. You're listening to the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
I do not like them, Sam. I do not like green eggs and ham.
Okay, maybe you're high too.
This is Cannabis Facts from Robert Platshorn's TheSilverTour.org, supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., poised to lead America's hemp revolution at hempinc.com. In 1937, the second most prescribed medicine, marijuana, was banned. It wasn't about marijuana. The paper, oil, and chemical industries lobbied to end hemp farming. No longer labor-intensive, an acre of hemp produced more quality paper than 4 acres of trees. Plastics and fibers could be produced from a plant. Hemp can even produce 10 times the energy of today's ethanol. As marijuana prohibition ends, many states now allow farmers to again grow hemp. This was Cannabis Facts from TheSilverTour.org, an educational nonprofit supported by our donors and Hemp Inc., a public company poised to process America's hemp crop at hempinc.com.
Don't want to spend money on a night out, but don't know what to do other than watching TV or playing video games? Consider playing guitar, bass, banjo, or mandolin. The instrument will give you hours of entertainment with friends with minimal expense. Stop by the Fingerboard Extension downtown Corvallis at 120 Northwest 2nd Street today, or check out its inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com.
The world of cannabis is evolving at a frenetic pace. The Russ Belville Show gets behind the headlines to take a deeper look at breaking news in our Cannabis Focus.
Today in the Cannabis Focus, I want to talk about flowers. That's what we're really legalizing here, is a flower, the cannabis flower that some people use for medicinal purposes, spiritual purposes, or just because they like the way it feels. But we're really talking about flowers. And so I was tuned into this story coming out of CBS Philly. And the headline was, Flower Show Organizers, Marijuana Advocates, Work Out Differences Over Cannabis Awareness Booth. Differences. Okay, a flower show. Okay, the Philadelphia Flower Show. And Marijuana Advocates, which is Green Rush Advisors, worked out their differences. What it was that Green Rush Advisors put together a cannabis booth. just an informational booth about a flower at a flower show. And the way that they worked out the differences is they pulled the awareness booth. So worked out our differences meant they kicked them out. And that's the solution, apparently. So the cannabis advocates get kicked out of the flower show here in Philly. And Skip Shuda says it was too hot a political potato. Says, quote, cannabis is still illegal in Pennsylvania, and given the current legal status in Pennsylvania, that was certainly a concern for the flower show. We were really focused on trying to educate people about the benefits of the plant. We want people to realize no one has ever died from a marijuana overdose. So that was our focus. End quote. This is a flower show pulling they weren't bringing cannabis into the flower show, folks. There was no actual cannabis plants involved here. We're just talking about, a diorama, maybe an explanation. Hey, there's this plant called cannabis, and hey, here's some facts about it. According to the Philadelphia Horticultural Society spokesperson, Alan Jaffe, he says there was no intent to mislead anyone. It just wasn't a formula that worked. The advocates say they didn't quite make it this time, but hope to have laid the groundwork for entrance into next year's show. Yeah, okay, we'll see. So, as soon as I saw this headline, I have this I've been doing this for a while now. I've been blogging and reporting on these marijuana stories for almost 10 years now. And there's this little, spider sense, Spider-Man, Spidey sense that I get that detects where there's latent irony or hypocrisy. And it's happened so many times that I can almost count on it. Whenever I hear these things of parents losing their kid for child endangerment, my first instinct is I'll bet somebody let their kid get into a gun and didn't lose their kids. And sure enough, I can find that story in a second, usually in the same general area, right? So in this case, when the Philadelphia Flower Show said they weren't going to allow an informational booth on cannabis to be there, I thought, I wonder if they allow poppies at the flower show. Poppies. Do they allow poppies at the flower show? The flowers that you can score to make opium from. Do they allow poppies at the flower show? So I did a little research, like I do, because you know me, I look shit up. And I found this story. Not even an old story. February of 2015. So I must presume from last year's flower show, from the Daily Local News. Headline, local florist creates movie magic at the Philadelphia Flower Show. And the one paragraph, about fourth paragraph, fifth, technically, 1, 2, 3, technically fifth. Two of these are just one-liners. But anyway, let me just give you the scene. As visitors enter the 2015 Philadelphia Flower Show, they walk on a red carpet through a lit movie palace marquee, past reflecting pools and searchlights toward a towering 25-foot-tall floral arrangement that includes lilias and forsythia, flanked by stately palm trees. Presto, they've entered a fantasy world inspired by Hollywood movies. Indeed, this year's show is called Celebrate the Movies. And here we go, folks. A plethora of roses and lilies, filled scrumptious arrangements poised over the reflecting pools. In addition to roses, there are hostas, lilies, geraniums, a bevy of begonias, poppies, and salvia surrounding the pools flanking the marquee. So we can't even show people pictures of the cannabis flower, but we can have actual poppies and salvia in the flower show being celebrated as part of the movies. Look at all the poppies. It's just amazing to me, the marketing campaign and the demonization that has happened to make a cannabis flower, so forbidden that it can't even be seen. And that's why it has nothing to do with the drug power of cannabis. It's the symbolism of cannabis that they can't stand. It's that awakening that the plant brings to all of us they hate.
This is bullshit. It's like Cypress Hill concert in here.
They know me too well. Hey folks, it's 4:20 in Denver, Colorado. Get your Rocky Mountain High on if you can. I'm using my CustomHerbGrinders.com grinder. Check out CustomHerbGrinders.com, and maybe later I'll roll up a 24-karat gold joint from ShinePapers.com. That's right, smoking gold, baby.
Great websites today need expert web design and development and need to be e-commerce ready and mobile friendly. But building a marketable and profitable website can be an uphill climb. Ready to make your new website or replace your existing website? Think Orange as the new way to get in the black. Orange Hill Development works with Fortune 500 companies and offer the same top quality development service at a fraction of what other providers charge. Brands like Absolute, Carlsberg, and Nestea trust Orange Hill Development. Find out why you should trust your website with Orange Hill. Contact Orange Hill for a consultation today at orangehilldevelopment.com.
You're not high. You're listening to the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
I said, on this program, what do they want? My grandchildren and the monster. Did I scare you?
Okay. Maybe you're high, too.
Ignite the conversation on some trending topics along the Cannabis Radio social media network. Join our crew of thousands on our Cannabis Radio page on Facebook or at Canna Radio, CANNA Radio on Twitter. Plus, look for our Facebook and Google Plus pages for all of our original programs and connect with Dr. Dina, Kyle Cushman, Dr. Mitch Earlywine, Nurse Heather, Doc Rob, the hosts of Ganjapreneur, and more. Connect with the growing Cannabis Radio social crusade at Canna Radio on Twitter or search for Cannabis Radio on Facebook, Google Plus, and Instagram and grow with us.
Hey everybody, it's Radical Russ here from 420 Radio, inviting you to be like me and get your ink done at Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo, Fort Worth's most female-friendly, clean, sterile, awesome tattoo shop. Thomas and his crew are true artists who can design you a custom piece or use a design you bring in. Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo also offers all styles of tattooing as well as piercings and all-around fun. In the DFW area, stop by Lucky Horseshoe Tattoo and tell them Radical Russ sent you. Trust me, it'll feel awesome.
Promoting the end of adult cannabis prohibition is easy because we have facts, science, reason, compassion, evidence, truth, and logic on our side. It's even easier when researchers catalog it all for us. Learn how to gather the facts on marijuana use, arrests, seizures, rehabs, drug tests, and more on this edition of Drug War Data Mining.
Today in the Data Mines, we want to take a look at the notorious 9 prohibition states. There are just 9 states remaining that maintain an absolute prohibition on marijuana in all forms. And that list is Idaho, North Dakota, South Dakota, Kansas, Arkansas, West Virginia, Indiana, Pennsylvania, and Louisiana. Absolute prohibition on marijuana. Now, Arkansas is moving forward with a medical marijuana initiative that's gathering signatures. So is Idaho. So there may be some hope for a couple of them. But right now, there are 9 absolute prohibition states. And what that means is they have no decriminalization. Decrim, a ticket for pot possession like you'd get in Ohio or Nebraska or Mississippi. They have no non-psychoactive CBD oil type of law like most of the southern states, Alabama, Utah even, Wisconsin, Wyoming have these CBD oil laws. They have no non-smoked medical marijuana like Minnesota or New York, where it's you get medical marijuana but it can't be bud, right? No non-home grow medical marijuana, where you can get bud, but you have to buy it from the dispensary. You can't grow it yourself, like New Jersey or Illinois. Or just, no medical marijuana whatsoever, like, New Mexico or Montana, California, where you can grow your own, right? And of course, no legalization, like Colorado, Oregon, Washington, and Alaska. Nothing. They got nothing in those Notorious 9. You get caught with pot in the Notorious 9 and you're getting arrested. Period. Whether you're a disabled vet who served our country, who's fighting pain and PTSD, or a desperate mom trying to save her daughter from epilepsy, you're getting arrested. And it's not just that those 9 states maintain marijuana prohibition. They maintain some of the strictest marijuana prohibition in the country. In West Virginia, possessing any amount of marijuana or cannabis plants is a misdemeanor, worthy of 3 to 6 months in jail. But that's just so long as the weight isn't enough to trigger an intent to distribute charge. And how much weight would that be? It depends on the prosecutor. Or Pennsylvania. In Pennsylvania, possession of less than 30 grams, a little more than an ounce, is a misdemeanor with 30 days in jail. If you have over 30 grams, you get a year. If you cultivate even one cannabis plant, it's a felony, and you get 1 to 5 years in prison. In Kansas, now this is interesting, you can have up to a pound of marijuana on you in Kansas, and it's just a misdemeanor with a year in jail, but only if that's your first offense. If it's your second offense, any amount of marijuana, a bowl, a joint, is a felony with 10 months to 3.5 years in prison. Second offense in Kansas. In Indiana, possession of any amount of marijuana is a misdemeanor worth 6 months in jail, and a single cannabis plant will get you a year in jail in Indiana. In North Dakota, not only is possession of any amount of marijuana worth 30 days in jail, but merely ingesting hash or concentrates is worth a year in jail. Taking a dab can get you a year in jail. Eating hash can get you a year in jail. And possessing any hash or concentrate, or more than an ounce of marijuana, is a felony with 5 years in prison. So if your friend brings up dabs in North Dakota and you take a dab, that's 30 days in jail. That's a year in jail for you. His possession of the dab is a felony. You can get 5 years. So there's not going to be any concentrate cups in North Dakota anytime soon. In Louisiana, now, possession of up to a half ounce in Louisiana gets you 15 days on the first offense. You get caught a second time, you're looking at 6 months in jail. Any cannabis cultivation gets a mandatory minimum 5 years in prison, first offense. Arkansas, possession of any amount of marijuana can land you in prison or parole for up to a year. Idaho, not only is possession of less than 3 ounces a misdemeanor worth 1 year in jail, and a cannabis plant is a felony with a 1 year mandatory minimum, but Idaho will lock you up 3 months for merely being somewhere that someone stores marijuana. And Idaho will lock you up 6 months for merely being under the influence of marijuana in public. Being high in public can get you 6 months. But South Dakota is probably the most dangerous place for a medical marijuana patient in America. While possession of less than 2 ounces is a misdemeanor with a 1 year sentence, authorities only need to find marijuana metabolites in your urine to get that conviction. Because South Dakota has the nation's only internal possession statute. You can be busted and put in jail for failing a pee test. And like Idaho, in South Dakota, you can get time for being in a place where marijuana is stored, but in South Dakota, it's a full year if you're just at a place where marijuana is stored. And possession of any amount of concentrate in South Dakota is a felony that'll get you a decade behind bars. It's great that we've got marijuana legalization and medical initiatives happening in 9 or 10 states now. And I say support them all, because only when the rest of the country has embraced marijuana reform do these notorious 9 prohibition states have any chance of entering the 21st century world of weed. We're going to take a break. You can find that Notorious 9 rant up on hightimes.com today. Check it out and leave a comment. As long as you're not trying to sell weed, please. Got enough of those comments. We're back with Doug Fine right after this.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
The next generation of vaporizers has arrived. Vuber vaporizers are blazing the way with unparalleled technology for oil, concentrate, or dry flower pens. Providing unsurpassed customer service and expert craftsmanship, Vuber vaporizers use cutting-edge technology, providing a power-packed, smoother vapor with a lifetime guarantee. Experience vaporizing the way it was meant to be. The Vuber way.
You're not high. You're listening to the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
We need to build a wall.
Okay. Maybe you're high, too.
Georgia.
Hi, this is Willie Nelson. Alcohol prohibition didn't work in the 1920s, and marijuana prohibition isn't working today. It's time we stopped arresting responsible marijuana smokers. It's the fair thing to do.
For more information, contact NORML, the National Organization for the Reform of Marijuana Laws. Call toll-free 888-67-NORML or visit their website at norml.org.
Are you playing an acoustic guitar but want to be louder without an amp? Try a resonator guitar. The fingerboard extension has National Resophonic and other resonators, square necks and round necks. Stop by the Fingerboard Extension downtown Corvallis at 120 Northwest 2nd Street today, or check out its inventory on the web at fingerboardextension.com. Go wild hog in the woods. Marijuana legalization also ushers in the return of the American hemp industry. Get the latest news from the author of Hempbound and Too High to Fail, Doug Fine, in our Hemp Day Hump Day update. Welcome back, everybody. 32 after the hour. Joining us by telephone, we've got Doug Fine on the line. How you doing, Doug?
Oh, I can't complain at all. I am sitting on a ridge above the Funky Butte Ranch here in New Mexico, dreaming of the hemp season to come.
Yeah, I've seen a couple of headlines lately. I think it was a CBS Market Watch one that said the hemp industry was ready to take off. What's the latest updates from the world of hemp?
Well, despite the fact that we are still awaiting the real opening gate of the industry with the passage of the Industrial Hemp Farming Act, the industry, the acreage is growing 10 times per year. The applications are blowing my mind. We're going to be free of petroleum-free plastics. Our next generation batteries are going to be sustainable and work better and be powered by hemp and other biofibers. Even the epoxies, resins, and glues that I try to keep away from my own children because they're so toxic today are going to wind up being biosourced. So it's bigger than we imagined. I dare say it might be bigger than Jack Herrera had ever imagined.
Yeah, going back to that decade, the mid-'80s, nobody could have even imagined this hemp graphene kind of replacement for batteries. And that technology, I think, is really going to be the killer app for hemp.
I was just today, I've been in a conversation with one of the fellows who was Eugene Lee, who was involved in the development of that battery research, and it's been fascinating. I've been interviewing multiple members of their team for projects that I'm working on, and they were surprised at the efficacy of hemp in the supercapacitor next generation nanotechnology applications. And as an environmentalist, meaning as someone who wants my kids to survive, the fact that the previous graphene sources were less than environmentally friendly in many ways, also very, very expensive to produce, is such a win-win. And so I'm working to get these guys to this Northern Colorado Hemp Expo that I'm coming up. It's put on every year by a friend and colleague of mine, Morris Beagle, and he's a solid dude and really does a great job with the festival. So I'm trying to get the horse's mouth, as it will, on this battery stuff see if we can get him there to give a talk about the, our next generation Teslas.
Yeah, this is going to be a huge technology, and I'm looking forward to that getting more exposure. And of course, the other technology that I'm really excited about would be the building materials that are available, hempcrete and other things. Are there more developments in that arena?
Yeah, to an extent, I mean, the answer is absolutely yes. I'm blown away by, we honestly could, and if you want to, we can, spend this whole segment talking about cool applications even beyond the hempcrete, this sort of herd mixed with lime or another locally sourced binder that sequesters carbon, lasts an incredibly long time. Even bees appear to use hemp fiber in the beehive to strengthen the hive. Even bees appear to use a hempcrete type material, and yet what's happening now, the last few weeks, what I've been watching has been atypically for me on the political realm. I think when we last spoke, I was just about to head to the Hemp on the Hill in a conference in Washington D.C., which has since happened. It was amazing. I'm carting a carry-on bag load of my own sort of samples, hemp fibers and plastics and hempcrete blocks through congressional security, not the traditional way with the traditional welcome that I would have expected for cannabis products in the halls of Congress 10 years ago, at the request of a bipartisan coalition of Congress people that want to inform and get this S134 passed. I don't know if it will happen this year, being a presidential year, but if it doesn't, it's going to happen very, very soon. And so that's all great news. And then sort of one sad note is my own state of New Mexico. One of my goats, my kids, my whole family wants to be growing hemp seed so we can press the oil and eat it, among other things, for our own health is how we roll here on the Funky View Ranch. And our legislature tried hard, but failed to override our governor's unconscionable veto of our bipartisan supported, widely passed hemp bill for the second year in a row. So we're not planting this year in New Mexico, along with 31 other states that are.
That's Republican Governor Susana Martinez, correct?
That is correct.
Yeah. And did she offer any rationale as to why she'd veto a bipartisan supported hemp bill?
Well, because she has a couple of years left in her term, and I continue to hope to work with her next year. I've spoken with her chief of staff. We've sent her hemp gift baskets. I personally addressed each item in her last year's veto letter, and offered, references and law enforcement and elsewhere, because she's a former prosecutor. I think it's not so much that she opposes hemp anymore. I'm not sure what her personal view is, but I think it was just not the politically right time. I mean, what her chief of staff told me was, next year is a little bit of a longer session. Let's try it then. And that, to me, it's so important. But it wasn't our hands to get enough of the original supporters to vote for an override, and that's a tricky thing to do, to ask for an override of one's own party's governor. The vote didn't fail. It just failed to happen. And so I'm hopeful that we'll turn it around next year, and I'm going to continue to work in a proactive way with the governor. Holy shit, Russ! I never expected myself to give such, diplomatic answers, but that's the political arena.
That's what politics will do to you. You got another 2 years with this governor, right?
That's it. That's right.
Understood. Very well. Do we have any other states that have moved forward since we last spoke?
Yeah, so I think things are looking good, if I'm getting the Dakotas right. One of the Dakotas is really getting it together, and the other Dakota failed, and it should have not failed. The project I've been working on is in Hawaii. They've got a bill with a lot of momentum, and I think, I could be wrong, but in the last reading of the bill, all along I've been praising them because they're really doing it in a great way that allows farmers to get to work right away, and it's spearheaded by a combination of one of the longest fighting hemp advocates in the nation, Representative Cynthia Thielen, a Republican who the famous David West hemp study in Hawaii in 2000 never would have happened without her support. And that was the one federally funded study, other than George Lieberland in Minnesota, that we hempsters have been clinging to for decades. Of course, the horse is out of the gate now, but with change in the research and federal law. But she and this youngster in his 20s, representing Maui, came together and had this great bill going forth that's got a ton of momentum, and I think it's going to pass. The only problem with it was In its initial version, it had not allowed flower use, which we all know is nutraceuticals, one of the big markets. And I was just, every conversation, you want to be appreciative, right? But I'm like, dude, this one paragraph here is shutting down the real apps. And I think if at the latest reading I saw on the Senate side, that restriction might be out. So Hawaii's good bill might have just gotten better.
Wow. And we've got some chatter going on in our chat room right now about how Oregon's Department of Agriculture still refuses to get the DEA permit to help the Oregon hemp farmers get certified seeds, and that North Dakota will be getting that permit before Oregon. Can you elaborate on any of that?
So North Dakota must be the good Dakota.
The good Dakota, yes.
So many states I can keep really close focus on at one time. And normally, actually, I make it my responsibility to follow every development. But working so hard in New Mexico and then being in D.C. over these last few weeks has kept me with a little bit of a blind spot. But I do pay a lot of attention to Oregon, and I'll be involved in Oregon this year. And Oregon's federal delegation is the best, along with Colorado and Kentucky, they're the three tied for first best in the nation in terms of pushing the federal agenda and winning the final battle. On the state level, this is what I have to say about Oregon at this point. First of all, I think that its agriculture department, they listen to these kind of interviews that are Hump Day, but also community radio type stuff that I'll do in Oregon, and they hear this and they appreciate when I say this, and I mean it. I'm not just being diplomatic. I do think that the Oregon Department of Agriculture tries to do everything that they can do to make it work. They are in that second tier, the second category of state that issues permits without too much hassle. There was the brief moratorium, which we discussed last episode, Russ, is thankfully over, so new applicants are able to apply. But it's in that category where people can apply, but then there's not much help after that. Congratulations, you have a permit, give us money, we'll expect you, but not a whole lot of help in the other final areas. But I consider that, from working in a couple of states now that are in that policy, to have the opportunity of making lemonade from lemon, which is because the federal law is changing rapidly. It changed for the better last December 19th, allowing interstate commerce in sync with 7606, the hemp research provision. It's making it easier for farmers to get going and do their thing. And it may be in the long run that those states that have less state interference might wind up counting their blessings in the future. It's hard at this moment, I admit it, for hard farmers, but we're doing everything we can to help them do what they need to do to get the crops planted and the industry started.
Now, is there a concern that if we get too far behind, that some of these companies that are looking to maximize like those hemp graphene batteries or building materials or whatever may just start setting up in foreign countries where hemp is already legal?
There are so many opportunities in hemp. So many. I'll get back to your original question now. You were saying, other things, other cool applications that are happening. I mean, it's partly a not knowing where to begin. But the one that I preach the loudest and that I'm finally starting to see traction from straight up bottom line people that were trying to make profit in the first moment, and coming to me wanting consulting, wanting advice, wanting help. You have to have a vision, and one of the visions for me is energy independence for communities or regions. And right there at today's prices, hemp fiber as biomass energy is an application that anybody can do. So sure, the places that, like Canada, that fund the research into next generation technologies are going to have an advantage. Colorado and Kentucky are both doing a good job. Colorado right out of the gate, Kentucky after a slow start. Colorado after a slow start is really getting on board, but I'm seeing research support in plenty of states right now. They're going to have the advantages in the areas where they're starting their research ahead of the game, and in seed development as well. But there is no stopping hemp, and it is not a sprint. It is not a horse race, except if you say who's going to corner the horse betting market. That's another right now profitable thing you can do with your hemp herd is bag it up and sell it as antimicrobial horse bedding. There's a buyer for it. So not too worried about it, although the idea of any government agents, any level, not throwing support for an industry that is it is equivalent to the Silicon Valley in the mid-'70s, of the industry that is about to take over this nation as the next big thing. It's backwards, it's unconscionable, it's on the wrong side of history, and we have to make sure that changes.
Doug Fine, you said it best. Thank you for joining us here on our Hump Day update. We'll talk to you in a couple weeks. We'll see what's latest in the world of hemp and give my best to all the kids of every species.
Thank you.
This is the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
The Russ Belville Show is proudly sponsored by the Marijuana Business Association. The MJBA, called by NBC News the Cannabis Chamber of Commerce, is the fastest growing business association in the fastest growing industry in America. I've been working with the MJBA for years, and I personally invite you to join the MJBA. MJBA also publishes the popular MJ Headline News on Facebook and the MJNewsNetwork.com and Marijuana Channel 1 on YouTube. Visit mjba.net for more details.
You're not high. You're listening to the Russ Belville Show on CannabisRadio.com.
As it relates to my brother, there's one thing I know for sure. He kept us safe.
Okay. Maybe you're high, too.
Chronicling the latest cannabis industry news and headlines.
Well, with 4 states with tax and regulate and the District of Columbia.
The state of cannabis.
Oh my God, it's refreshing. We have people that generally wouldn't speak on behalf of cannabis for fear of retribution, fear of losing your practices, fear of many of those things, and find ourselves in a place that we finally can.
Bringing you fact-based news and views and keeping listeners on the pulse of what's happening in the industry today. The state of cannabis. On demand anytime, only on CannabisRadio.com.
With over 6 years of experience in the industry, New Era CPAs is one of the nation's leading cannabis accounting firms, helping hundreds of growers, dispensaries, and ancillary companies with their tax, legal, and business strategies. New Era CPA's offices cover the West Coast from Seattle to San Diego, and their skilled team is always available to help you take your business to the next level. Visit neweracpas.com for more info and set up a consultation. Welcome to the New Era.
We must wage what I have called total war against public enemy number one.
I support a change in law to end federal criminal penalties for possession of up to 1 ounce of marijuana.
That marijuana, pot, grass, whatever you want to call it, is probably the most dangerous drug.
Some think there won't be room for them in jail. We'll make room.
I experimented with marijuana a time or two, and I didn't like it and didn't inhale.
One major responsibility is to encourage people to use less drugs.
Entirely legitimate topic for debate.
Radical Rant.
So the patient-focused medical marijuana advocacy group Americans for Safe Access has released their 2016 State of the States report. It grades the 50 states for their medical marijuana programs or their lack thereof. And to little surprise, ASA gave California a grade of B+ for its overall average score of 88, based on the categories of patient rights, access to cannabis medicine, ease of navigation, that'd be like getting through the bureaucracy, applying for the card and so forth, functionality, that is, can you abide by the law, is it functional, and consumer safety. Each of those categories gets ranked 0 to 100. So 5 categories get ranked 0 to 100, and each one of those categories adds up its 100 points based on subcategories. So for instance, there's 100 points for the patient rights category. Of that, 40 points are possible from arrest protection, ranking its arrest protection. And then another 15 points are possible based on whether it has an affirmative defense in court. Another 10 points can be earned for protection of child custody and so on, right? So, can you guess a state that tied with California for the highest score in the nation at 88 points. Colorado, perhaps. Nope. Colorado got an 84. Good solid B, but not an 88. Oregon, maybe? Nope. Oregon beat Colorado just barely. Got an 85. Good solid B, but not an 88. Did anybody guess Illinois? Yes, Illinois. Somehow, ASA has come up with an incredibly detailed report card system that ranks California and Illinois and, to be fair, New Mexico as equally great medical marijuana states with a score of 88. Illinois is a better medical marijuana state than Colorado or Oregon, where you don't even need to be sick to be protected from arrest for the possession and cultivation of marijuana. Illinois is a better place for patients than Colorado or Oregon, where any adult can walk into a store, purchase cannabis and cannabis seedlings without paying $1 to the state for a registration card or $1 to a doctor for a permission slip. Illinois, the state where their medical marijuana law is just a pilot program that will sunset in a few years unless it's renewed. That's a better medical marijuana state than Colorado or Oregon, with 15 and 17 years of medical marijuana respectively. Illinois, where the possession limit is 2.5 ounces for every 2 weeks and no home grow is allowed. That's a better medical marijuana state than Colorado or Oregon, where any adult can cultivate 3 or 4 mature plants and possess at least a half pound at home. In Colorado, possess up to the results of the harvest, whatever that may be. In Oregon, patients can possess 24 ounces. But Illinois, with the 2.5 ounce limit every 2 weeks that you have to buy at a dispensary, is a better medical marijuana state. Illinois, where there are just 8 dispensaries in a state of 13 million people, is somehow a better medical marijuana state than Colorado or Oregon, with hundreds of dispensaries in states that are 9 million people combined. Illinois, where the law is currently protecting roughly 2,000 patients from arrest, is a better medical marijuana state than Colorado or Oregon that protect every adult from arrest for personal amounts, and roughly 200,000 patients combined from arrest for medical amounts. Now, this isn't to completely dismiss ACE's 2016 State of the States report. They've got a ton of great information in there. They've got this great chart of all the qualifying conditions possible in a little grid. You can feel which states have PTSD, which states have Crohn's disease. Great reference. But reading the grading kind of reminded me of a Super Bowl spreadsheet I once built. See, when you look up the records of Super Bowl teams, as a nerdy sports fan like I am wont to do, when you look up those Super Bowl rankings, they rank them based on the win-loss records, which didn't seem right to me, because it didn't seem right that the New York Jets, a 1-0 Super Bowl team, should be ranked above my beloved Green Bay Packers, a 4-1 Super Bowl team. They won 4 Super Bowls. They only lost 1 because that stupid John Elway. But the Jets would get ranked higher because they got the perfect record, 1-0, 1,000 win percentage versus an 800 for the Packers. And that just didn't feel right in my gut. It just didn't seem right that a 4-time winner would be behind a 1-time winner. So I concocted a formula for my spreadsheet by which a win counted for 3 points and a loss counted for 1 point. So Packers would end up with 13 points and the Jets would end up with 3, right? And with this formula, an 0-4 Minnesota Vikings or Buffalo Bills team would have 4 points for the 4 losses, and they'd rank ahead of the New York Jets with 3 points because, come on, going to the Super Bowl 4 times ought to make you a better Super Bowl team than a team that only went once and won it. That ought to count for something, shouldn't it? So I showed this to some people, some fellow sports fans, and someone convinced me, no. A 1-time Super Bowl winner ought to rank ahead of a 4-time Super Bowl loser. The Jets ought to be ahead of the Vikings and the Bills. So I changed the formula. So 5 points were for a win and 1 point for a loss, which shifted the Jets above the Vikings and the Bills, but it also shifted the rankings of some of the other teams in this system that was previously a 3. Anyway, I've gone way off on the tangent. Anyway, the point is that ACE has given a very thorough explanation of its grading system. And it's very meticulous about this subcategory and that subcategory and this subject and that subject. But my gut just tells me that just like the Packers are a better Super Bowl team than the Jets, my gut tells me there's no way in hell Illinois is a better medical marijuana state than Oregon or Colorado. There's just something wrong with your grading system when California and Illinois are coming out as the top states for medical marijuana patients, and the legal states of Colorado and Oregon are next best. Because at its core, what is medical marijuana? I don't mean what is the medical value of cannabis, that's another question. What is, quote, medical marijuana, end quote, as a policy? Medical marijuana is providing exceptions from criminal prosecution for people using marijuana for medical purposes. But the important part is that medical marijuana is not legal. It's an exception to criminal prosecution. And so a lot of how ASA is setting up its grid and its grading system has to do with how well do these medical marijuana states protect their patients from prosecution. To me, to my point of view, if your state is legalizing marijuana, that does more to protect patients from criminal prosecution than anything else. That kills the probable cause and the drug dog that gets you to the arrest in the first place. So if ACE is giving out 40 points in their patient rights thing based on arrest protection, the only states that should be getting 40 points are Colorado, Oregon, Washington, Alaska, and Washington, D.C., because they've protected everybody from arrest. And they've removed that threat of that probable cause for the smell of weed from everybody, whether they get a medical marijuana card or not. Now, I'm not surprised that the rankings came out this way. ASA is very, very stridently pro-medical, and that's all we talk about. To them, legalization doesn't exist as something in their worldview, as something that they're for or against, really. It's just something that's out there for the stoners, right? So I'm not surprised by this, but by any rational, objective measure, you'd have to say that a state that has legalized marijuana has got to be better, at least in the respect of protection from arrest, than any state that is merely providing arrest protections or affirmative defenses from that original arrest. I'm sure a lot of people have a lot of opinions on this one. That piece is up on marijuanapolitics.com if you want to get in on the debate about it. That just seems weird to me. There's no way Illinois can be, no home grow, 2,000 patients, sunsetting in a few years. No, sorry. Doesn't pass the smell test. Well, that's our first hour, folks. Stay tuned. Hour 2 is next. Toker Talk Radio. Our phone lines are open at 971-533-7111. That's 971-533-7111. For everyone here at CannabisRadio.com and Rolla J Studios, I'm Radical Russ. Until next time, take care of each other, tokers.
This is the Russ Belville Show. The Russ Belville Show is blogging and podcasting daily at radicalruss.com.
You take a seed, you plant it, you grow it, you dry it, you roll it, you smoke it. You take a seed, you plant